It's with great pleasure that I welcome back Dr. Sean Patel, who's the CEO and founder of Prep Expert, the title sponsor of the College Admissions Process podcast. Sean, you have a special message for the listeners?
Hey, John, I just wanted to mention for all the parents and students who are listening to this great podcast, we have a really special offer only for listeners of the College Admissions Process podcast for Prep Expert. So if your student is going to be taking an online SAT, ACT, PSAT course anytime soon, or is looking for one-on-one tutoring with top 1% tutors, head over to prepexpert.com. We offer live online courses for every college admissions exam. On top of that, we have the best score guarantees, best curriculum, and best instructors in the test prep industry. And just for listeners of the College Admissions Process podcast, you can get 20% off any online SAT or PSAT or ACT course, as well as one-on-one tutoring. So you can get 20% off. Just make sure you use the promo code College Talk. That's one word, College Talk, and you'll get 20% off just for listeners of the College Admissions Process podcast. And I hope you guys can use that to your advantage, save a bunch of money at prepexpert.com.
Thank you so much, Sean. And to everyone out there, once again, that promo code is College Talk. That's one word, College Talk. Thank you all, and best wishes. Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome back Jessica Dietrich, who's the Senior Associate Director for Recruitment Strategy at Ithaca College. Now, Jessica was on the podcast back in episode 54, which was released, I can't believe how long it's been, in July of 2022. Jessica, I'm so grateful that you're back. How you doing today?
I am doing so great. Thank you for having me again. It's something I've been looking forward to, honestly, since 2022. So I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you back, and it's always a pleasure to see you at the NACAC conference, at the NICAC meetings, and always a pleasure to catch up with you, Jessica, and I'm looking forward to hear all about what Ithaca has to offer since we last spoke. And so for listeners, Jessica, who may not be familiar with Ithaca College, how would you describe the institution's mission and educational philosophy, and what truly distinguishes Ithaca from other private colleges?
Sure, absolutely. So our institutional values at Ithaca are rooted in academic excellence, respect, and accountability, as well as innovation, sustainability, and equity. So we truly believe our mission is to educate, engage, and empower through what we call theory, practice, and performance. So what I've always said that makes Ithaca quite compelling and different from an academic perspective is that we are a private comprehensive college that is grounded in the liberal arts. And this is a real distinctive blend that brings together strengths of multiple institutional models in higher education. So, for example, we offer professional degree programs such as business, physical therapy, film, media, but we also maintain that strong liberal arts foundation. And it's that foundation that equips students with this versatile skill set that's designed to prepare them not only for today's careers, but also for those careers that have yet to emerge in this very quickly changing world and landscape that we find ourselves in. So I've been at Ithaca for almost 16 years, if you can believe it, John. And I always come back to the community and the people I work alongside. They're truly among the best in the field, in my opinion. And most importantly, they're driven by this deep commitment to helping students grow into the best versions of themselves. So I'm really inspired as a professional by that approach. We see that approach play out in the successes of our students and graduates and what they experience even after they leave the campus. And it's what has kept me grounded at this institution for literally over a decade at this point.
Well, congratulations on that, and I appreciate the
Thank you.
overview. You're welcome, and I appreciate the overview in terms of it being a liberal arts school. That's its foundation. And Ithaca, as you touched upon, is well known for its strong pre-professional programs, experiential learning, and creative culture. So, Jessica, when reviewing applications, what qualities signal that a student is prepared to take full advantage of Ithaca's hands-on academic environment?
So, like many institutions, and as your avid podcast listeners have likely heard before, we engage in holistic application review at Ithaca. So, a strong academic foundation that is reflected in a student's transcript is likely one of the most important metrics that has the most predictive value of a student's ability to find academic success in college. But we're also looking for a willingness to learn, to adapt, and frankly, this desire to grow. And I don't think we talk enough about college as a space where students should be challenged within an environment that also supports them through those said challenges. So that balance is essential. It's how we learn, it's how we develop as individuals. So, with that in mind, in an application, I'm paying really close attention to how students have responded to challenges in their lives so far, how they've made use of the resources that are available to them. And what that looks like can vary really widely from student to student. And it will be shaped by factors such as their background, their personal circumstances, even their personality is going to shape this. But I really try to evaluate each application through a contextual lens, considering that environment and the opportunities available to them as reflected in their application materials.
Well, we really appreciate the fact that, of course, you have a holistic review, but you're also looking at the academic foundation. And perhaps even more important, you're looking at a student's willingness to grow. Now, Jessica, once a student submits their application, what does Ithaca's admissions review process actually look like? For example, how many readers typically review a file, and how are decisions made when applications fall in the middle?
So it may seem like a straightforward question with a really simple answer. What's the formula? But unfortunately, there isn't a one size fits all approach here. So our application review process includes multiple layers, and that level of review can vary depending on the applicant and the circumstances unique to them. So, for instance, if I have a student who's applying into our School of Music, Theater, and Dance, they will be required to participate in an audition or an interview that then include our faculty, which adds a whole additional dimension or layer to that evaluation process. So I think there's often this assumption that reviewing applications follows that fixed formula when in reality, that's not usually the case. And that could be a little bit frustrating for a prospective student because it's hard to grasp the recipe when you can feel a little bit like secret sauce, right? So, for students who fall somewhere in the middle of that review range, one of the most accessible next steps that I often engage in is requesting additional academic information. So, for a first year applicant, that often means senior grades. For a transfer applicant, if they are currently taking classes, we may ask for, say, a current grade report or wait until that semester has concluded to determine their admissibility. But we're frequently asked whether senior year really matters and when a student is applying in the middle of or the midst of senior year. And the short answer is absolutely yes, it unequivocally does matter. But once we receive that additional academic information, we're typically able to move forward with a more complete picture of the student and make a more informed admission decisions. And outcomes may vary, but really the ultimate goal of any admission process is to position each student for success at that institution.
Well, we appreciate that. And I love how you talked about senior year because, yes, students, it's very important to keep on building ramps, keep on working hard because you never know when those grades are going to come into play in terms of whether or not you're going to be admitted. Now, Jessica, every college shapes its incoming class intentionally. What institutional priorities play a role as Ithaca builds its first year class each year?
Sure. So there are a number of different institutional priorities, and those will shift even from one admission year to the next admission year. But that said, something that has remained consistent at Ithaca is our efforts to market and position the college in a way that shines a light on programs that are sometimes overlooked, but absolutely shouldn't be overlooked. Their value has often been validated by third party recognition and more importantly by the strong student outcomes that our graduates have experienced. So for example, IC has long been known for its performing arts programs. When I speak with students, when I speak with school counselors, the conversation often immediately turns to the arts. And that reputation makes sense. The arts are deeply embedded in our identity. It is who we are. We were founded as a music conservatory. But what's less widely recognized is that Ithaca also features more than 200 laboratory spaces and offers students meaningful access to undergraduate research opportunities. Yet, I receive far fewer inquiries about a STEM program and research initiatives than I do about the arts, right? And that represents, I think, a missed opportunity for many students. It's natural for students and their supporters to focus on reputation components, and that's often where the loudest messaging lives, but there's so much more to that story. So we're always trying to shine light on some of those opportunities that often aren't widely recognized as they should be.
Well, I appreciate you giving an overview of the different programs. You're known for your performing arts. You're founded as a music conservatory, but you have tremendous research opportunities. So I would imagine, again, as you said, if students are asking about those areas that are less talked about, that's definitely something that's appealing to you and your team throughout the admissions process, correct?
Absolutely. We're always trying to shed light. And don't get me wrong, we get interest in these all the time, but I think that many lead with that arts, if you will. And while it's important to us, I think can't choose a favorite child, John. I can't choose a favorite major at Ithaca, right? We have 70 majors, 70 minors, and we're well rounded by design.
Wow, 70 majors, 70 minors. And Jessica, when students apply from so many different academic backgrounds, schools that offer AP, IB, honors, dual enrollment, all of the above, none of the above, and their different career focused pathways, how does Ithaca evaluate academic rigor within the context of each student's high school?
Sure. So I think I can attest and say that every college wants to see students challenge themselves academically, taking on that appropriate rigor based on their individual abilities and the opportunities that exist and are available to them at their high schools. And in many cases, this will heavily depend on what your school in particular offers. But that said, colleges evaluate academic rigor within then context. So when your application is submitted, often by your counseling office, it's going to be accompanied by a school profile, which is updated annually and it outlines the courses and programs that your high school provides. And this profile is essential. It helps us on the college side understand the context of your academic choices. Using both your transcript, that school profile, we assess how you've pursued rigor and incorporated that into your experience academically, and whether you've been able to maintain a strong academic performance while doing so. So, challenging yourself academically here, I want to just say, should be the main priority with the potential bonus of then maybe earning some college credit through transferable coursework, because a lot of students, families, they focus primarily on the credit transfer component or aspect. But I think that's putting the cart ahead of the horse. Each college evaluates transfer credits differently, but by contrast, I've yet to come across a college that doesn't value the effort a student puts in by incorporating rigor into their curriculum.
Yeah, so you definitely want to see students what it is that your high schools offer. The context of what your school offers is how they evaluate you. So, based on whatever is offered, did you challenge yourself? How did you perform? And again, looking at your high school. A lot of times parents will ask me, are our students being compared to students from another high school? And again, I repeat, as many admissions officers have, is that they look at your school profile, the context of what's offered at your high school, what you students chose to take, and of course, how did you perform? And so if you are not familiar, students and families, with your own school's profile, make sure you reach out to your guidance office or look online. Oftentimes it's available online so that you get a little insight in terms of what the admissions representatives are seeing when they are in fact evaluating you. Now, Jessica, does Ithaca rely on the GPA reported by the high school, or does your office recalculate GPA? And when evaluating academic readiness, what matters most in your review?
Yeah, so GPA recalculation, it often depends on the information that's provided by your high school. So many high schools, for example, now reported weighted GPAs. It's become a standard practice. And we can't use a weighted GPA effectively or fairly and equitably without a scale for comparison. So in those cases or circumstances, a recalculation is likely necessary. Some schools actually don't even provide a cumulative GPA at all, but just have individual grades in each classes in each subject area, in which case it necessitates us calculating the cumulative GPA in that circumstance. So this ties into the advice I often give students, which is to focus your energy on what you can control in this process. So you won't be able to control how a college interprets your transcript or calculates your cumulative GPA. They will have a process for that. What you can concentrate on is doing your best academically. And that's where your effort will have potentially the greatest impact. And so I usually direct that energy in that way.
Well, I think that's great advice. Focus students on what you control. And in fact, working hard, doing the best you can, again, based on the context of your high school, is definitely something that is in your control. Not necessarily getting A pluses in everything, but
Right.
just focusing on what's available to you and doing your best certainly is. So, Jessica, what is Ithaca's current approach to standardized testing? And what guidance would you give students who are unsure whether submitting scores will help their application or not?
So I love being able to say that Ithaca has been test optional since 2012. I often joke that we were the trendsetters. We went test optional before it was cool. So this is not anything new for us. We've been doing it for quite some time. So at this point, test scores at Ithaca have little impact on our admission process and even our merit scholarship considerations. So I want students to spend no more than 5 minutes deciding whether to submit their scores to Ithaca because that energy again is better spent elsewhere. So my advice usually comes down to how a student feels about their scores. So if taking that test was an accomplishment that you're proud of, you worked hard for that score, go ahead and submit them. You've earned it. But if testing was perhaps more of a disappointing experience for you and your strengths are better reflected elsewhere, especially in your transcript, then focus on highlighting those elements instead. So that said, I believe Ithaca approaches the test optional policies differently than many other schools, and these policies can vary widely between institutions. So, very important to have a careful conversation, conduct thorough research, and then reflect on your own testing experience and outcomes before making a decision whether to submit or not submit your scores.
Hey, podcast friends, if you've been enjoying the College Admissions Process podcast, I'm excited to share my new book, Straight from the Admissions Office, Insider Strategies for College Applications. It's packed with insights and tips from over 250 podcast episodes with admissions professionals designed to make the college process less overwhelming. Whether you're a student, parent, or college counselor, it's a valuable resource for navigating the admissions process. By grabbing a copy, you're also helping to support the podcast. The links are in the show notes. Thank you, and best wishes to all with the college admissions process. Well, I love that you're a trendsetter. You've been test optional since 2012, and you reported that there's little impact in terms of your team's review of your role application and standardized tests. Now, students, I think most of you, if you've heard the podcast episodes, you've heard me talk about this thing called the common data set. So if you search common data set, insert the name of the school, oftentimes they will give you data in terms of how important something like standardized tests are in their overall review. And again, I repeat, Jessica talked about how there's little impact at Ithaca, which is great. Now, Jessica, the activities section can be very limiting. There's a very limited number of characters that students could use for each activity. How important is it for students to communicate commitment, growth, or impact? And do you have an example of how a student used this section particularly well?
Yeah, it's funny you asked this. This had just come up on a panel that I was sitting on very recently. But really focus on your activities by highlighting those that have been most meaningful or impact to you. If you're finding that the amount of spaces and being so condensed is limiting, you know, showcase the ones that are worth showcasing to an admission committee and keep those descriptions really concise. You don't need full sentences, especially given all of the character limits. I would center your descriptions on perhaps leadership roles or personal growth within an activity. So, for an example, if you're on the soccer team, I don't necessarily need a summary of the sport itself, nor the frequency or the duration that's going to be shown elsewhere in the activity list. What is helpful is noting roles like assistant captain in 2025, captain in the year 2026, which clearly then demonstrates growth and leadership within the activity itself.
Well, we appreciate that. And the personal statement can feel intimidating for so many students, probably because at the time that they're filling out their application, the transcript is essentially done, right? Because ninth, 10th, and 11th grade, I'm assuming, is complete. Their activity list is pretty much done because they're listing things that they've done in ninth, 10th, 11th grade, and hopefully they're continuing in 12th grade. But the personal statement is a clean slate. So, Jessica, what makes an essay effective in Ithaca's review process, and what common mistakes do you see that weaken applications?
Yeah, so I would say perfectly reasonable to feel intimidated by the personal statement at first. Many students, they haven't been taught to write in this style, and yet we expect you to tackle this successfully. But I can assure you, with focus and the right support, you'll be successful in this task as well. So, common pitfalls: losing focus on yourself and the story. Students often spend way too much time setting the scene and not enough on the central point, which is supposed to be themselves. So, since this is often the only part of the application where I can get a sense of a student's personality, you may want to ask yourself, is my personality coming through, at least tangentially, in this essay? I also may be opening a can of worms here, John, but I think it's worth mentioning because we are, as you said, in 2026 here, no longer 2022. And what I've found, the increasingly common mistake that I'm encountering more and more frequently, is essays written by AI. So, application reviewers, you got to keep in mind, we read thousands of essays each year. And over time, experience makes it very possible to spot AI generated writing. Many schools are using now or incorporating AI detection into their application review processes. And even the suspicion of AI without verification can raise questions about academic integrity. And that can be enough to generate a deny decision. They don't have to tell you why, right? So, to be clear, students using someone else's words isn't new. It's just more accessible with these AI tools. But I think the key point here is that there are appropriate and inappropriate ways to use that to support your writing. And if you choose to use it, it should serve as a tool to guide and support writing, not to replace your own voice. So, as you're moving forward, something to just bear in mind as you're preparing those essays for all of your applications.
I appreciate that. And the common theme, students, there is nothing or no one that could replace your authentic voice. And that's what they want to hear. And they know what a 17-year-old sounds like when they're writing that essay. So again, make sure you're using your authentic voice. Make sure you're not having AI write it, because AI cannot replace who you are as a person. And in the personal statement, that's really what they're looking to learn. The transcript tells you about all the great academics that you hopefully have been through, the activity sheet, hopefully all the great things that you've done outside of the class. But that personal statement is a real window into who you are as a person and your personality. So don't use AI. Don't do it, students. Now, Jessica, many applicants at Ithaca are drawn to specific schools or programs, as you've mentioned throughout this episode. How do you assess a student's readiness and fit for a particular program?
Sure. So, applying to a specific program doesn't change the approach that we evaluate each student holistically. Students can, and they often do, change their intended major. They change their mind. But indicating an area of interest or a major upon application, it could add another layer to that holistic review. So, for example, if a student is interested in health sciences, I'm not going to look at just their overall academic performance, but I'm also going to be considering how they have performed in their science and math curriculum specifically. I'm going to be looking at the rigor of those courses and whether they've continued to pursue them in their senior year. The goal is to ensure students have that foundational knowledge needed to succeed in their first college level courses in that respective field. And then additionally, I think it's also important just to be aware of any requirements that may be in addition if you're applying to specific programs. So, for example, our music applicants, they typically need to complete an audition, which can affect application deadlines and notification timelines. And so you just want to make sure that you're paying very close attention to those details if that pertains to you.
Well, we appreciate that. And I always put the Office of Undergraduate Admissions in the show notes. Jessica, if there are any other links related to auditions or different programs or anything else, feel free to send them to me. And of course, we'll make them available to the students and their families in the show notes. Now, you talked about a lot of different supports, but I was curious, how does Ithaca support students that may have had an IEP or a 504 plan while in high school to ensure that they continue to be successful not only academically, but personally once they're on your awesome campus?
Yeah. So every student is looking for a college that aligns with their individual unique needs and what we often refer to in the industry as fit. So students with an IEP, a 504 plan, or a learning difference, understanding what's available in terms of support services at the schools that you are considering is a key part to finding that fit for yourself. And it should be considered at every school that you're exploring. So at Ithaca, we have what we call student accessibility services. I encourage prospective students to connect with them during the college search process, well before you've committed to attend, because it's really important to determine whether those accommodations and services that they provide are going to meet your specific needs. So keep in mind that college visits generally don't always cover this level of detail. So you're going to want to plan ahead. Ask how to best engage with these offices during a visit, or if there's a way that perhaps you can follow up after your visit so you can have your questions answered around the services that they provide and support that they provide.
Well, that's great advice to reach out to the Student Accessibility Services office. And a quick follow up question, Jessica, would you recommend that students do that before applying, before being admitted, after being admitted? Is there certain advice that you would give students in terms of that?
I would say that you don't want to apply to a college that you're not going to attend, right, John? And so I think that this is such an important component for a student who needs that level of support, that I would begin asking those questions, engaging those departments as early as that college hits your list. Because if it doesn't meet your needs, I don't think it's worth then following through on submitting an application and continuing to spend your time researching a school that could be separate, again, energy used elsewhere to research other institutions that better meet your needs.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. Number one, students, you should not be applying to a school that you would never, ever attend. With the common application, making it so simple to apply to 10, 15, 20 schools, more and more students are applying to schools that they would never actually attend, which is a big mistake, right, in the college process. Now, in addition to that, during your research, if there is a college that does not offer the supports that you may need, that might indicate that it's not the right fit for you. So I agree with Jessica. Definitely do the research early. Definitely advocate for yourself and go to the accessibility office or call them, visit the website, do your research to make sure that if there's a school that you think you're interested in, if you need extra supports, make sure that those supports are in place. Now, Jessica, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Unfortunately, we're getting close to the last question. And I always like to ask, is there a question that I didn't ask you today that you wish I had? Or is there a topic that simply didn't come up in the conversation that you'd like to share with us now?
Well, I feel like because we're doing almost like part 2 and part 1 was in 2022, I was curious, if you would ask if there were any changes from our original podcast that we had launched back then. So I thought I would walk you through some of the different things that have happened over the past number of years, that bring us to where we are today. So Ithaca this past cycle launched and highlighted a variety of new scholarship opportunities, which is very exciting, including our presidential scholarship, which covers full tuition and fees. We have 4 additional scholar programs beyond that, but I think the crucial take home point here is that earlier applications are required to be eligible for these types of scholarships. So, for example, to be eligible for that presidential scholarship, it necessitates submitting an application no later than November 1st and then submitting the separate application for that scholarship. So things are shifting to be earlier than they have been historically at Ithaca. We've also launched a number of new programs since 2022, and we've adjusted existing programs to meet some of our market demand and account for the changes that are happening in the world and in different industries. So, for example, a few years back, we restructured our School of Business to offer majors we always had, but expand upon that and introduced programs like strategic leadership and business analytics. This past cycle, we launched a new BFA program in dance and choreography for musical theater, so double downing on that arts background. And I can attest there are a number of discussions happening at the moment about the launch of some other new popular areas of study, although I unfortunately can't disclose exactly what they are until we have approval from the New York State Department of Education. But more to come for that on our next episode, John. We can talk about that. And also, while not entirely new, I mentioned it in my 2022 episode, But when we had just launched the Ithaca commitment, we've continued to focus on financial transparency, and we're simplifying the financial aid process. So as part of that effort, we focused on making our net price calculator as accurate as possible. But we also provide admitted students with a 4-year financial forecast. That includes a cap on tuition increases each year. And that's been incredibly helpful for families. It allows them to understand the total cost and affordability of a student's entire college experience up front, not just their first year, which is the vast majority of financial aid packages out there. So they're not being caught off guard by unexpected tuition increases, something many families can be surprised by.
Well, I'm so glad that I asked that question and you gave that answer because you gave us so much information. Number one, the cap on tuition increases, which is very important because college is a 4-year commitment, and oftentimes we're looking at it as that 1-year process where you're trying to find fit and you get admitted and then you're deciding where to attend. But you really need to know your financial aid package for the 4 years. And I'm really glad that you mentioned the net price calculator. This is a very educated audience, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Each college or university, they're mandated to have what's called a net price calculator. Search Ithaca College plus net price calculator and you'll find it, or net price calculator, insert name of school. And it's not perfect to the penny, but it will definitely, based on how accurate you are, how honest you are with the information, it will give you a really strong number in terms of what you're going to pay over 4 years. Too many families don't use it at all, don't have the financial fit conversation, only to find out that they're admitted to a school that they really want to attend, and they find out afterwards that they can't afford it. So again, we really appreciate you sharing all of those resources. Unfortunately, Jessica, this does lead us to the last question, which always is, what are your top 3 pieces of advice? And you've given so many, but what are your top 3 that you would provide students and their families getting ready for the college admissions process?
Yeah, so I wanted to make sure I provided 3 pieces that were different from my original episode. So if you wanted to, you could go back and listen to those if you wanted even more advice. But first is try to tune out the noise. And by that I mean that everyone tends to think they're a college search expert. And they often share their opinions freely. And while this often comes from a really good place, there can be a lot of pressure that comes with it from peers, from friends, even family members. But this process is really personal. It's unique to the student. And those individuals won't be the ones attending classes or living on a college campus. So make your decisions authentically based on what feels right for you, because you know yourself best. And to that end, this goes hand in hand with keeping an open mind. You'll learn a lot about yourself and what's important to you as you navigate all of these options. Secondly, I would say don't hesitate to ask for help when you need it. Some students are reluctant to reach out, but there are many people ready to support you. So recognizing when you're struggling or feeling challenged is part of developing self-awareness. And that is a skill that you're going to rely on heavily in college and beyond. So start building that habit now. Pay attention to how you're treated throughout the admission and college search process. That experience can often offer meaningful insight into how you may be treated as an enrolled student. So notice the tone, the responsiveness, the overall approach to engaging with prospective students. It often reflects a broader college campus culture. And then finally, view this process as a chance to learn more about yourself. The range of experiences you'll encounter along the way will contribute to your personal growth and development. And that growth is ultimately more meaningful than the name of the institution where you enroll. So embrace this opportunity for self-discovery. It's an important milestone in your development and an exciting one as well. So hopefully we can lean into that.
Great pieces of advice. Number one, tune out the noise, and there's definitely a lot of noise out there. Ask for help, and I really appreciate what you said, not only to ask, but being mindful of the tone of the responses, particularly at a college or university, based on how they respond or not. That really could give good indication in terms of the culture of that campus. And then it's a reflective process. Students, learn about yourself. Definitely enjoy it, as I hope you've enjoyed this podcast episode, because Jessica, you are awesome. I look forward to having you again in the future. We won't wait 4 years for the next one, but
I
you
hope
were great.
not.
We definitely won't wait the 4 years. You are awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica. You're terrific.
Thank you, John. It was a pleasure as always.
The pleasure was all ours. And to everyone out there, good luck with the college search. Take care all, and best wishes. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the CAP. Thank you for listening to the College Admissions Process Podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success.